not allowing deadlines to get missed is an important part of the culture, because ultimately, as an owner, you have a vision and you have to have steps to achieve that vision. And if you can't get the steps down, there's no way in hell you're going to make the journey.
This is the PMP Industry Insider Podcast.
Thank you for joining us for another edition of PMP Industry Insider Podcast, where we look at what's changing in the pest control industry and take you to the front lines of those that are driving those changes in the industry. This is Dan Gordon from PCO Bookkeepers and M&A Specialists. We do outsource CFO work as well as exit planning services for the pest and lawn industry. And with me today, in case anybody has seen us swap positions, because we're just changing things up, is Donnie Shelton of Triangle Services. So, Donnie, why don't you introduce our sponsors?
Listen, if you're watching this on YouTube,
topic.
yes, if you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to see my face is completely red because I threw a fast one on Dan right before this. So I'm like, let's swap it up, and you do the intro, and then I'll do our sponsors, and he is just.
People are going to be lost. They won't know
He is just loving it, and it's making me laugh. So you can see what I do for entertainment purposes. But I am Donnie Shelton, owner of Triangle Home Services, as we always say, Triangle Pest as well as Triangle Lawn. And we are a sponsored podcast, which we are very grateful for our sponsors. And, as always, when we talk about our sponsors, I personally use them all. If you are interested in marketing services from digital strategy, as far as overall strategy, or if you're concerned you want a conversion-driven website, please give Colmarch a call. They are a sponsor. They're also a avid supporter of our podcast, as well as a lot of the companies that we work with in our peer groups. Make sure that you mention Dan, just so they'll give you a special deal. They say that they're going to give you a month off for free for our listeners. So make sure you do that, just so we can count the beans and keep them as a sponsor. Also, PestSure, that they provide insurance products for the pest and lawn industries. Of course, I'm a big avid fan of PestSure. I'm sure most of you who've listened to the podcast know that I am. I like the fact that they're backed by folks who understand our industry and was created by actual people in our industry. So PestSure, go over to pestsure.com if you want to learn more about that. And a recent sponsor, I won't call them new, they've been with us for quite some time. And I would say I'm a new customer of them, which is Voice for Pest, which offers phone services, voice solutions for any size PCO. And of course, they're really big into AI right now. And they don't say that on their little blurb here, but I'll say it. And it's probably the coolest thing one of the reasons that we converted over to Voice for Pest. They've got a lot of AI help for your CSRs. So if you've got looking for summaries of calls, those types of things, they've got a lot of integrations with CRMs. And always with any of these sponsors, make sure that you tell them that you heard of them on the PMP Industry Insider Podcast, just because it helps us pay the bills and keep the lights on. And with that, I will also put a plug in for our peer groups. If you are interested in joining the PMP Industry peer group, we've had several episodes on this idea of being a part of a peer group. I love where our peer groups are going. It's great. Dan and I get to see at least the virtual conversations because we have them on a communication platform. It's amazing some of the ideas that come out of these groups. And usually what happens is that once a group gets started, they really take a life of their own and they become really good friends. And more importantly, they push each other and push themselves. And so if you're not a part of a peer group, I would highly recommend that you become a member of one. We certainly have the infrastructure to do that, whether you're in pest and lawn or if you're in both. Be happy to get you set up and working with a group of folks that would ultimately, I think, benefit your business. I know I've been a member of a peer group. Oh gosh, Dan, I don't know what, 15? Yeah, it's been a really long time, and it has absolutely helped me in my business, especially when it comes to, I kind of view my peer group as like my board of directors. There are people in a room who are not willing or not afraid to tell me that I'm pretty stupid when I need to be told that. It's hard to get that in a meeting when you're the owner. Not to say that you can't, but it's probably unlikely. So with that, Dan, did I get everything? Anything you need to?
I think you did. If you're trying to cut down on the time for the
I did. I failed. Yes, 100%.
You failed miserably. But,
it
was good to shake it up.
Yeah, I got to shake it up. Get it all over. So anyway, today,
let's talk about.
So today, it's going to be a Dan and Donnie episode, which means that we're going to ramble on about a topic that's probably near and dear to our heart. And today's topic is turnaround tactics. Fix your team's deadline problems for good. And I like this topic because I have been in the throes of this over the last, I'd say probably year and a half. Maybe actually it's been longer than that. It's been quite some time. Um, I'm on the backside of this, but Triangle's not the only business that I have. I have a few other ones. And it's funny because, at Triangle, I've got a lot of infrastructure, I have a lot of people, and I've got really good managers. I have amazing managers, and I've got a great leadership team. And so I kind of keep myself clean. I don't have to deal with a whole lot. But now in some of these other businesses, I'm the frontline guy. So I have to have like these hard conversations, and I've got to like, did we do the checklist? And
Your 13-year-old's lawn business? Is that
yeah, well, that one I'm an employee of that one. That would be my my two sons have their lawn mowing business, and I'm manual labor, so I just put my head down and run the weed eater and the lawnmower and hopefully don't get yelled at. But that's a whole nother story there. So with that, let's talk about that. Let's talk about, if you were, and listen, if you've been in business or you deal with people, you've absolutely ran into this problem, which is where you as an owner or a leader come in with an idea. There's change that needs to get made. You talk about it. You get agreements. You make a plan, and then what happens, Dan?
And then you don't follow up, and they don't follow up, and nothing gets done.
Nothing. That's right.
By the way, I just want you to know this applies to all aspects. I don't want to get too in the weeds with this, but my wife needs to listen to this.
If you're not careful, I'm going to tell her that she does need to listen to it, and if she does,
Yes.
you will be woefully.
We've had a deadline to clean out all the crap in the garage.
Yeah,
Just-
yeah,
it's
yeah.
Anyway, moving right along.
So let's talk about it. How do you do this, right? I mean, oftentimes we talk about leadership and blah 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 and what do you. But I thought a really good kind of in the trenches, like this is how you turn around this problem of, hey, I've set a deadline and it's not happening, or I have a team and I've got a leadership team and for whatever reason we're setting goals and we're setting tasks and then we get together and then all of a sudden it's like it's halfway done or it's partially done or whatever. And listen, I have struggled with this throughout the years, and I want to share a few things I've learned. I'm sure Dan's going to share a few things that he's learned. And the very first principle that I'm going to talk about is this idea of looking in the mirror, right? When you think about you as a leader, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Dan, certainly I have. And in fact, I've even done it, which is where I'm really upset because I've said, hey, look, this is what we're going to do. And then we get together, it doesn't happen. And who's the person that I blame?
You blame everyone else, whereas you should be blaming yourself. Because all you have to do is put a date stamp as to when it's going to get done. Put it in
That's
your,
all.
or your
Yeah,
Google
yeah. Just be like,
Calendar or whatever it is that you organize yourself with, and it should be done, right? That's the way
yeah.
it works. Because I have lots of those little bookmarks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, for me, I love the book Extreme Ownership, and this very topic is covered extensively in that book, and especially when it comes to deadlines. And listen, the reality of it is this: is that if you have a team who's not executing, who's executing partially, or are missing deadlines, I mean, the very first place to start is you, right? And we've all, I mean, I've sat in on really funny presentations where someone's hemming and hawing about someone not executing on their team, or such and such in the office doesn't do their job, and yada yada yada. And I love it when the speaker's like, well, who hired that person and who continues to pay that person? And so ultimately, the very first point of, how do you turn around a team that's missing deadlines? How do you turn around a person that's missing deadlines? Is that you got to start with you, right? I mean, you are fully responsible for the performance. You're fully responsible for the deadline. Like, it is ultimately, yes, you delegate that, but that does not absolve you of the responsibility of the deadline. So really what's happening here, and this is probably the most important point, is that if you set a deadline, that's your deadline. That's not that person's deadline. So of course they may miss that, but ultimately that's your fault, right? Because where does that go? I mean, the first thing is like, were you clear? I mean, you want to have something really, really funny, like a little exercise to do with your team. I've done this before, and it is hilarious to watch. You ever heard of the tapping game, Dan?
No.
Oh, it's great. It is such a great game. And it's a great game to play with your leadership team. So think of a song, any song, right? Now, right now, um, Dan is thinking of Simon and Garfunkel. No, I mean, but you think of a song that you
Did you
can
watch
think.
Sticks last night?
I did
Have you been watching that on Apple TV?
I have not. No, no.
Simon and
But
Garfunkel
yeah, so
with
you think of a
Cecilia.
song, think of a song in your brain and then just tap it out and then try to get people to guess what song you're tapping. And it is impossible, right? In your brain, you're like, this is so easy because you're singing this song in your brain and you're like, happy birthday to you, whatever. And people are like, I have no idea what the hell he's tapping. Right. And so what the point I'm trying to make in the beauty of this exercise is that it shows people, you know, especially you as a leader, right? You have this picture in your mind. It's super, super clear. And when you tell people, hey, yeah, this is what we're going to do. And it's so clear to you. And then you leave the meeting and you come back and you're like, what happened? And then like either nothing happened or they went way off mark. And ultimately what the real problem here is not their performance. It's your inability as a leader to create super, super clarity around what it is that you want done, what that person's role is, what your expectations are. And this is hard work along with like, for me, when early on in the business, when I did this with checklist, right? And Dan knows that, and if you spend any time with me, I'm a big checklist person because, checklists were written procedures and that's hard work. It takes a lot of time to do that. But really what you're doing is you're clearly defining the role, you're clearly defining the expectation, and you're clearly defining what their responsibility is to be. And oftentimes as a leader, it's super easy to get caught up in the moment, super easy to get caught up in your vision, and then forget about the minor details of exactly what that means. Super, super clarity. So what do you want to add, Mr. Dan?
Well, I think
Are you
that
gonna tap you're gonna tap me out a song?
well,
No.
no, I think it's important to, you know, uh, I have a partner, Anthony Pepe, for people who deal with us, they know Anthony. And
I love Anthony.
well, Anthony's approach to things like this is if people just did what they were supposed to, then you wouldn't have to have a podcast. Or his approach to standard operating procedures,
Uh-huh.
everybody do their whatting job. We wouldn't need these
So
SOPs.
he's your Bill Belichick of PCO.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes. Everybody do
He's
their job. Hmm.
so.
Well, I mean, and the reality of it is that, again, this is something that it's almost like, as an owner or as a high level leader, this is, the picture to you is super, super clear because you're the visionary, right? I mean, you're the person that's like looking out front and that level of detail for most personalities that are visionaries is just like pulling teeth. It's terrible. I can't stand plug your ears here, Dan, being around accountants and attorneys because they are all about the details and they have to be. I understand that, right? I truly get that. But it annoys the crap out of me,
I
man.
would
It just
tell you that you're right. I think that I'm a little different, but when I talk
whoa,
to
whoa, hang on, whoa,
attorneys,
hang on, whoa, stop, stop, stop right there. Hang
go
on.
ahead.
For everyone that was just listening to the podcast, can you just say that last sentence one more time? You can tell me what?
I'm a little different.
No, 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 no. Back up one more.
What did I say? That
Said I was right. So keep going. All right. Now you got it.
oh,
You said I was right. I can tell you you're right.
you
So
get home, you're all insecure. Nobody tells you that you're right. So come on this podcast
exactly.
for
That's right. No. So yeah.
affirmation, positive affirmation.
Validation. Validation is what I
So,
need. Yes,
so,
100%.
but seriously, because I work with a lot of accountants, I grew up around accountants in my career and whatnot. And you're right. Sometimes there's a thing called materiality. Don't spend too much money if there's no return,
Hmm.
look for pennies
Right.
when, you're costing dollars, that kind of thing.
Right.
But I also think that sometimes when I see it with attorneys, it's just because they bill by the hour. There's no other reason because I
Right.
deal with attorneys all day, every day. And
Oh,
it's like, man, you went to a really good law school and you're a really bright person. Why are you?
right.
I believe it's the billing.
Yeah, why are you out on the nth degree of things of
Right.
possibilities and walking through every little level of detail on nth degree that has about a 1% chance of happening, right? Anyway, so long
But
story
some
short,
attorneys would tell you that the reason that you need an attorney is for that 1%. You don't need an attorney when everything's going right. You know.
well, I mean, and the point here is
Oh,
is this is
right.
that I don't for those that are listening, I want to be super clear what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this, you need those people in your life.
Absolutely.
100% you need them, right? I know I need them. My point I'm making is that you as a visionary, you as an owner, you have this very, very clear picture in your brain And oftentimes it's difficult for us to make that clarity to the point that people understand their role clear and they understand the expectation and they understand their responsibility, even though, like, because it's hard for you to communicate that at that level of detail. That's the only point I'm making. And I know for me personally, I have to be intentional about that. Like, am I super, super clear? Did I write it down? Did I make it? Because if you don't have the clarity, then that's we get back into the we miss deadlines or we miss big things. Oftentimes it is you, right? Because you're not being super, super
A
clear.
lot
So
of times you'll have an assistant or whatever, and you can talk in half sentences, and they've worked with you for so long that they know what you're going to do, but other
yes.
people can't do that.
Correct. Exactly. Exactly. So point, principle number one, if you've got a team that for whatever reason you're missing deadlines or you're not hitting all your deadlines or whatever, remember step one is start with yourself. And I think any leadership topic, that's always going to be the number one step, which is, you're fully responsible for making sure it happens. If you're super, super clear and you get full agreements from folks and it's still not happening, well, then it's your responsibility to put someone in the seat who can, right? So it all starts with you. So, and then the second thing is are you being really, really clear with that person about, or that team about what it is that you're trying to get done? Okay. So principle number two, and this one is a big one. I see this one
Hold
a
on.
lot.
Before you do that, I just want to give the bullet point from principle number one. I will give you, not only did I say that you were right, but I like this bullet point. Clarity creates accountability.
Yes. Yes.
That's a good one.
It is.
We just steal that from.
I don't know.
All right.
Listen, I mean,
Okay.
the internet's big these days and,
Hey,
yeah. So,
everything is
I
true.
just learned how to use Google. So, no, but I mean, it is, we talk about this, the first bullet point, which is, owning it. The second one is just creating the clarity, because without the clarity, you don't have accountability. And listen, I don't like that. And I don't want to keep belaboring this topic, but, when you don't have clear roles and you don't have clear expectations, then it's all fuzzy, right? Did we make progress? Yeah. What progress did you make? Well, I thought about it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, no, it doesn't quite get it. So number one, ultimately deadline attainment belongs to you as a leader. Number two, you're not being a good leader with deadlines. And what I mean by that is, and this was a big one that I don't know why I struggled with this, probably because I went too far the other way first when I got out of the military. And that is fear of conflict. Have you ever seen people do this? Like they,
Oh,
for
yeah.
whatever reason, and I understand there are real reasons behind this, right? They don't want to have the tough conversation. And this is deep, right? In some cases, it could be that person doesn't want the disapproval, or they don't want to make, they quote unquote, make other folks upset, like somehow, some reason that they, they're about their feelings. And, another one, and this is a big one, and this is the one that you really got to pay attention to as an owner, is that they're afraid because they don't have other options. You think about this. I've seen this happen so many times. It's like, how many times have you been a manager and you got someone on your team that needs to go? You don't have anyone in the hopper, so you allow stuff to happen. Deadline goes
Oh, it's
by.
not, it goes, we had a situation like that at the accounting firm last year, but it's the same with your pest control, your lawn care is I've got five technicians, and if I lose one, I can't spread his work.
Mm-hmm.
There are four. I've got 20 technicians. I lose one. Everybody just takes a stop, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and you're right. The idea of firing somebody, that means when something new comes in, that means that I have to do it. So I
Correct.
do it.
No, listen,
That's
I am
definitely
guilty of this.
huge.
I'm
Yeah.
guilty of this. I remember back when our branch was super, super small and I was running the day to day and I was it. Right. So if Gary didn't show up, guess who was running the route that day? That would be me. And I had a bunch of other stuff that I had to get done that day. And if I had to go run a route, well, then it was happening that night. And so now, me, instead of hanging out with my kids or whatever, now I'm going to be doing work. And so this whole idea of fear of conflict because of where it might go, this is a problem, because when you avoid those tough conversations and you allow things like this to slip, you're basically training people that deadlines don't mean anything. That's what you're training. like it or not. That's what you're training. So that's the first thing is this whole idea of fear of conflict. The
So I
second
have
one,
wait before you go on. I have
yeah,
to tell you that we had somebody in our peer group who, when she met Donnie, she said that he was full of you know what, that he's just a big bunch of hot air and everything, and she couldn't believe that he was this organized, SOP guy from the military and everything. And her company kind of really sucked. She stayed in our peer group for three years or so.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
And last year we sold her company for millions because she paid attention, not to Donnie, but what he's saying is
Couldn't be
absolutely.
me. No.
Yeah, you know who I'm talking
I
about.
know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah, I absolutely know exactly who you're talking about. And you know what? Good for her. I
Yeah,
mean, seriously, good for her. She's good folks, by the way.
yeah,
You know
she's
who
awesome.
he's talking about. She's good people. And she was one that she did. She started drinking the Kool-Aid and
Yeah, no,
she,
she could not believe that any of this,
yeah,
because her life was in this total bedlam and,
yeah,
reactionary type
right.
mode rather than
Well,
create.
what it was, and to this case specifically, and we have to be careful about talking about this too much, but here's what I will say is that, well, this person sucks. This person doesn't do this. When truly the real issue was that leader not creating clarity and assuming that in her brain, that picture is the picture that everyone else had. And once she kind of that clicked and she started putting it on checklists and she started like, getting very process oriented, then things really took off for her. And again, good for her. I know exactly who you're talking about, and it is a success story, and that stuff does work. And by the way, she was not afraid of conflict at all, at all. Let me just say that she wasn't afraid of conflict, but she absolutely did not create clarity of accountability. So that brings us to our second point under a sign that you're not being a good leader with deadlines. So there's fear of conflict, but then there's also this whole idea of avoiding accountability. And what that means is that someone you're clear with someone, you've got an agreement, they agree to it, you agree to it, they show up and it's not done. And listen, the easy thing to do there is like, oh, I understand. That's fine. And listen, that is appropriate sometimes, but if it happens over and over again, like for me, I'm okay with one. At two, we're going to have a discussion. And I mean, I've heard some of the most craziest stuff. I remember one time we had like you had to text a customer for I forgot what it was, and it's like, oh yeah, I didn't have time to do that. And I stopped right then. I said, I want you to get your phone out, and we're going to text a customer right now. And they did. And I was like, okay, so that took you 4 seconds. You're telling me over the last week, you know what I mean? Like I just made it super, super clear that this is not a negotiable item. And I'm not telling people that are listening like you need to be General Patton. I'm just simply making the point that, people are going to treat you how whatever boundaries that you set with them that you're going to allow and not allow. And for me, you know, not allowing deadlines to get missed is an important part of a culture because ultimately, as an owner, you have a vision and you have to have steps to achieve that vision. And if you can't get the steps down, there's no way in hell you're going to make the journey, right? And so the point is that don't avoid the accountability, lean into the conflict, and don't get yourself in a place where, as best as you can, that you don't have other options, right? If you're in a place where you don't have someone on the bench, that's your fault. You know what I mean? If you're operating out of fear, that's something that you really need to take a good hard look at and be like, okay, we need to do more recruiting. I need to bring someone on board. And if you don't have time to do it, great, outsource it, right? Get someone else to do
Well,
it.
the whole bench thing, right? So that's, when you're a bigger company, you can afford that. When you're a smaller company, I've got, four technicians and I'm going to have one guy on the bench. That's 25% of my workforce. So I agree. But this notion of, um, deadlines, right? So deadlines for your accounting close each month. I have to get all my
Mhm.
information so I can close the accounting. How about deadlines for getting work done? How many have technicians who, brand new technician who wants to test and see, well, I'll bring back five of the stops out of 10,
Mm,
say I couldn't make
mhm.
it or I caught traffic or
Right.
the customer turned me away. That's also another deadline. Hey,
It is.
you get 10 stops, you come back with 10 stops that are completed. That's the way it works.
So at Triangle, we schedule and we optimize the routes so the technicians don't schedule their own work. And I'm not saying or advocating that's a superior way. I've seen companies do it the opposite way where they have the technician do it and it works very, very well. That's how we do it. But the thing that I say is like, look, we go in with the game plan. And if you don't execute the game plan, what's the point of even having a plan to begin with, right? Because now we got to reset everything. It's just so disruptive. And outside, and our policy here at Triangle is that you do your route, and if there's anything that's going to deviate from that, that needs to be a sign off from your manager. You don't get to make that game day call because it's so critical and essential to our business, right? Because if that stop doesn't get done, now think about how the back office work that it takes. First of all, there's this whole customer experience thing because customers expecting you out there. Now I know not all companies work that way. We do here at Triangle. So there's the customer experience part of it. Then there's the rescheduling. Then there's the re-optimizing. And then there's going back out there. Like there's just a lot of negative things for making that game day call. And listen, I don't want to make it sound like we're perfect because we did have a problem with that a few years ago, especially on the lawn side.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'm not getting into that. So we have since fixed it. Mostly, no, I'm just kidding. We have fixed it, but it wasn't easy, and it
So
was
what
not.
is the
No,
process? Okay, so I decide that I don't want to do a stop. I call into the office. Who
no,
makes the call?
no. The office does not make the call. No, you have to call your boss and explain this is why I can't get, and the boss has to approve it. And if the
Okay.
boss says no, well then you're going to do it, and if you don't do it, well then you're going to get written up. That happens 3 times, and you'll get the opportunity to go somewhere else, right? Um, but that's really how it works, and it has to be that way because again, what's the point of creating a route and optimizing all the routes and creating this grand plan if when you get out on the field you can't run the ball, right?
Mm.
And it's a big problem. So, all right, let's talk about how to turn folks around. So we've dealt with the leadership side of things, and we've dealt with being not having options and not owning it and putting the blame on the wrong people and those types of things. As far as turning folks around, if folks aren't hitting deadlines, it really this is where you kind of put your work boots on as an owner and start getting into what's happening in your business. Now, if you have a smaller business, you know, bring in some folks who may understand how to do things better. And I see this a lot where people have these very complicated systems, these very complicated processes, and it takes a long time to do simple things. Now, the thing I love about technology is that, you know, it's complicated usually to set up, but it greatly simplifies things and it makes things a lot easier. I mean, I think about today. I mean, a good example of this would be I'm going to date myself when I say this years ago, when I was personally training technicians, I would spend half my time on treating or teaching them how to kill bugs. You know what I'd spend the other half of my time doing? Teaching them how to read a map book. like I'm like, okay, we're going to this address. Like, yeah. And I'm like, so which way are we going? They're like, we're going left. I'm like, no,
You
you're
know
out.
why I didn't get that, right?
Right. Because you,
Because I'm not that old.
yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah. They'd be like, yeah, I'm going left. I'm like, not quite. Let's go to the other left. And so point being is that, this whole idea of, you know, I mean, so my point I'm making is that, when we got the phones and we had GPS systems, like it just completely eliminated that complexity out of our business and people didn't need to worry about it. And I mean, there's tons and tons of examples. I'm sure you have many, many in accounting. I mean, I remember back when you first got on bill.com and we went over to that and how much that simplified our business. I mean, there's just so many things that you can do. My point is like, if people aren't hitting deadlines, I would definitely be looking for where the bottleneck points are, where the streamline, how do you streamline these areas? And then if you don't understand it or you don't have the chops to do it, get yourself in a peer group and find people who are doing it really, really well, and then go visit them, right? And visit and figure out what it is that they're doing. And,
Mm.
oftentimes you get into a peer group, at least someone in that peer group is going to be running the same software that you're running. And I promise you, we all face the same problems. And so, they may have a better way of doing it. Sometimes they may not. I mean, I remember Dan and I had a shared client back when I was with Coalmarch. This was a big issue for them, and they had a very large business, and everyone was getting paid but the owner. And you know who I'm talking about.
Mm.
And that was a first order business, was getting rid of all them freaking consultants and getting rid of all the complexity and getting back to the basics again. And so we look at how do you turn a team around? Number one is that simplify, simplify, simplify. Looking for the bottlenecks, looking for the processes that are probably don't need to be there, because I could almost guarantee there's 20% of things happening in your business right now that could probably be eliminated, and it would make your business even better. So that's the first thing. Second thing is clear expectations and accountability. This is where, and I talked about this earlier, but this is where a checklist really, really help. People, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's ego. It probably is. Um, people are resistant to checklists for some reason. Have you noticed this, Dan?
Well, so checklists are interesting, right? So it used to be that you could walk around with a clipboard. Nobody even knows what a clipboard is anymore, and yet it's checklist, right? So
On a
then,
chalkboard. No,
right. No, a clipboard,
I know, but I'm saying your
yeah, yeah,
clipboard
yeah.
had a chalkboard
Yeah,
on
yeah,
it. So there you go.
yeah.
Yeah.
So now you've got your iPhone and you just knock off things like that. But a checklist is good, but it also um, you know, you can just check off the boxes. It's interesting. So we run traction here, L10 and whatnot, and you go through your to-dos and or and your rocks and everybody's on, but and then you rate the meeting. And the other day we had a meeting and it seemed like it went well, and the ratings were like a 7. And I was
Oh,
like, yeah, why is this a 7? Because we talked about a lot of things. We opened up but we didn't get a whole lot accomplished. We didn't go away from
mm,
the meeting saying, okay, you do this, you do this, you do this. We just went down the checklist and checked the boxes. And we
right.
actually use Basecamp to do our L10 with the checklist. We have, the
Hmm.
IES, we have the to-dos, and we just knock them out. And we knocked out a bunch, but it was kind of interesting. So
This is the one case.
checking things off for the heck of checking things off, or that's not the way to do
Well, let me just explain a couple of things about checklists because, like most things, you can go too far, right? You're looking for the golden median, right? So checklists are really good for people who are first starting, and they're very good for consistency. Where I see people getting in trouble is where they're so focused on the checklist, they forget the principles. So,
it.
an example of that would be, and listen, I just had this at our company. I just trained on it at our last Pulse meeting where we had the entire company together. I'm sorry, our state of the company. And, a customer calls in and it breaks a little something on the checklist. And so instead of like making it right with the customer, we're going to follow the checklist. Now you have to be careful with this, right? Because you can't have people being feral, right, and just running their own program. But they forget the fact that at the end of the day, our job is to solve the problem for the customer. And if that doesn't quite align with the checklist, like, you need to understand those types of things, but you also need to understand the point of the checklist, right? The point of the checklist is to create happy customers, right? I mean, so that's the danger that you have to be careful of. But if you have nothing, well, then there's nothing to hold people accountable to, right? There's no clarity. And so it's having that infrastructure and then also having the intellect and the bigger picture that you can apply principles within that framework and not being, some people, you talked about traction here at Triangle, it's called detraction because I have a lot of rule followers on my leadership team and they don't like breaking rules of traction. And traction tells you don't break the rules. I will tell you that I have broken the rules of traction from time to time because to me, traction is a tool. And if the tool's not getting me what I want, well, then I'm either going to modify it, I'm going to throw it out. And so, um,
So is
and,
detraction in the words, is that kind of like untraction, or is that like
no, and listen,
Donnie's form of traction?
I try my best to follow it, and we really do
Yeah.
95% of the time. But if there's a time when it's like, no, we got to do this, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. It's not getting me what I want right now, and I have no problem at all, and just like blowing right through it. So, in any case, that's a really important point, right? Is I would say you use checklists for that as far as turning the team around. And then the last thing, and this was the hardest one, and we're going to even get to. By the way, before we start this episode, Dan's like, we can't talk about this long. I'm like, no, we got more than enough. We're not going to get to the last major point. But this is probably the hardest one, especially if you have a leadership team. And I don't care if it's 4 people, I don't care if it's 15. And that is fostering this idea of a healthy conflict and commitment from people from within their peers. You ever notice this, Dan? Like if you got a management team, like they don't want to like hurt each other's feelings or they don't want to like call each other out or they don't want to if you show up to a meeting and look, they all depend on each other. Like say for example, if I have a manager who's not calling a customer back and in the office gets a phone call from the customer and the customer's just, just blazing mad, well now that other manager has to basically take care of that customer because the other manager didn't. If they can't go to a weekly meeting and call that person out, that's a big problem. And so you have to train people how to call out And then you also have to train them how to commit. And that takes a lot of time and effort. And there's a book called The Advantage. And we've had Patrick Lencioni on the podcast before, but there's an entire chapter on how to encourage conflict.
Well, it's interesting, right? So you get a lot of middle level managers who, let's say if you're a sales guy, you're going to get a big commission on this big sale, right? You're going to sell this big bird job, right? And so the sales guy's all jazzed and he's going to do whatever he has to do to make it happen. The operations guy, he could be a stonewaller saying, geez, this is going to get me in all sorts of trouble because I'm not going to have the right guys to do it and I don't have the right equipment and we're not, and so there's no big why for the operations guy. The operations guy, if it comes off right, it's just like, great, he gets a pat on the back. If it comes off wrong, it's all his fault. The sales guy, he's getting a commission, right? So he's got to get it done. So how do you create the why on the operations guy to do something?
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe he'll fail, maybe he'll screw it up, but
And that's a big one. And what you're talking about right now is a critical part called the greater good, meaning that, the ultimate thing that you have to get done in that management team is that people have to see that team as their team, not the people that they manage is their team. And listen, that is very ingrained. I almost every single new manager that we promote, they're like, I'm going to fight for my team. And you're like, yeah, that's this team. That's not the people that report to you. You know what I mean? The people that report to you, like we, meaning the management team, that's our team, and we need to win as a team. And if for example, this sales job is not going to be a win for the company, and you're not mature enough to see that, well, then maybe you don't belong on this team. You know what I mean? I mean, that's the real. So going back to your question, that's called the greater good, and it's really shifting that mindset of that management team that we win as a business and we lose as a business. There is no such thing as like, hey, the defense really pulled it in, and we lost the game. You still lost, right? I mean, that's the real key part there, and that's a hard thing to listen. I'd love, and if you're listening to this and think I have it all figured out, I'm telling you this stuff from experience and from screwing it up, because I can tell you right now, I have absolutely struggled with this. We have finally gotten to a pretty good spot now. Now, that doesn't mean that in 2 years from now, I may have it come back again and we'll have to deal with it again. But the reality of it is that, you want people to be able to call each other out. You want them to be able to commit, and you want them to be able to commit as a team. And the only way you get them to commit is to agree that what they're doing is good for the business and for them to have the right perspective to do that. And if they don't have that, you need to train that. And if they still can't get over that, they still can't, then that means they're not really a team player, and they probably don't belong on your team. Does that make sense?
yeah, yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay, we have to finish up. We have one more. So how to turn around is simplify, set clear expectations as far as checklists and principles, hold accountability, and then I know it's going to sound crazy, but encourage conflict and of course commitment. The last one is a culture of execution, and that would come through constant communication. I mean, the rule that we have is if you're going to miss a deadline, and I wish we had more time to talk about this, is I understand deadlines are going to get missed. Totally going to happen, right? I mean, a case in point, this is a hilarious thing. It happened. I can laugh about it now. I wasn't laughing about it 3 weeks ago. I had another business where I have a hangar, and there was this big thing that was supposed to happen, and then a tornado hit the hangar. Legitimately. So, yeah, we're not going to make that deadline. I mean, so my point is like, but that kind of
Everybody's plane in the hangar got wrecked, but
no, that not only one got wrecked, luckily. But point I'm making here is that this whole idea of communication before the deadline passes, and that's my rule. You can miss a deadline as long as we talk about it beforehand. If the deadline passes and there's no communication, well, then that's a write-up, right? That's a totally different. To me, it's like if we had a lot of communication,
you haven't brought it up,
right? Exactly, right. If we're talking about it, hey, here's the challenges I got, because I might be able to help you get rid of those roadblocks, right? And we may still be able to make it, or I may be able to support you or something like that. But not talking, and then not hitting, and then showing up, not passing, well, that's a big problem. And so there's that, right? The whole consistent communication and making sure that communication is done prior to the deadline. And then the last two things is, obviously putting metrics on things, making sure the metrics are being hit, and then, constantly reviewing the processes and making sure that, oftentimes if you're fighting deadlines not getting met consistently and you've checked yourself and you're super, super clear, you're probably asking for something that's not possible, or you've got some sort of, bottleneck that you need to solve, and your team really needs, either you or your team needs help in figuring out how to improve the process, how to improve what's going on. Or maybe you just need to adjust your expectations, and no, you can't create a $50 million in a company in 1 year, right? I mean, that's the other piece of it. So, all right, Dan, we're getting here to the end. Anything we need to add, or do you think I'm missing?
I think that you hit it. I'm actually pretty impressed because this topic is extremely important, but it's kind of, here's what you do, here's how you do it, and get it done. And I didn't know that there would be enough content to do a whole podcast, but
Well,
we
we do talk about
yeah,
some
we
of it.
do. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. So Dan, you want to close us out here? We're switching roles, so this has been kind of fun watching. So you want to finish this out and tell everyone what they need to
Sure.
do? Yeah. Okay.
So, a reminder that all resources and topics that we talked about will be available on the podcast website, pmpindustryinsider.com, under show notes. And as always, if you'd like to rate us and review us, we like the positive ones. But for anyone who has negative comments, just send them right over to Donnie. He likes them. And, by the way, if you have, so here's an interesting one, I guess Marisa put on. If you have ideas for future topics, we're all ears. Send it in.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
email us.
For sure.
We've got a pretty rich list of topics, but we definitely want to hear from you.
Yeah, for sure. And with that, we're all signing off. We'll see you all next time. Take care now.
Bye.
Bye.